Right then, can I first of all welcome you all. We are amazed at the number of people who took a normal meeting of the BRYN Historical Society. This started off a few months ago at the community centre, where we only showed a few photographs, and all of a sudden people have a great deal of interest in BRYN, the history of the BRYN. And to be honest, you know, I'm 66 and a half now. But it's amazing what's happened in my lifetime, that the kids in the village can't get over. Some young lad 30 years of age was talking to me the other day, and he couldn't get over that there were guns down in pennies. Yeah? They do anything but the camp. Nothing but the soldiers. Nothing but they're marching to church on a Sunday morning with Ray Lewis and there wasn't gun walking in front of them. Yeah? You know, this is all part of the history of the BRYN. And it's great to see this number here tonight, and I'm sure we'll go from strength to strength from here. At the moment, we've been asked to become involved in a project that they're carrying out in the English school, in the BRYN school, in that they are entering a competition, and it's a community award, so they want adults involved as well, in preparing something about their village. Well, already I thought of Talbot and Brutus walking up on Howland Moat, up at the golf links, that was the old Roman road. Yeah? Looking down at the BRYN and saying, there's a way valley for this. Yeah? And from there, we can go on to the Vikings coming up past the Pencaster, the monks in Portal Harbord and up in Penhesia, you know, the farming community, the mining community, and the other industries that went with it. The copper works here, the brickworks here, you know, the number of shops that were in the BRYN that are no longer here. Main reason, chimney buses. Yeah? People were doing so. I had a letter from Nan Roberts, Nan Morgan, many of you might remember her. Her father and grandfather were bakers in the village here. Yeah? And many of you remember the bread they made. And Nan mentioned in the letter, quite often people would come in to buy a loaf of bread and turn up 5 minutes later to buy another one, because they'd eaten it on the way home. Yeah? And she was saying that the father sold the business to a certain person called Jackie Daly. Yeah? That was her. Yeah? In the 1950s. And the reason being that people weren't coming back and forth with so much bread then. They could go on the bus down to Talbot to my state to buy cut bread. Yeah? You know, and I'm sure the shops in the village might have gone in the same way. Even though you had vans, peddlers vans would come around or whatever. But anyway, a person who knows far more about BRYN than I is Alan, and I'm very, very glad that he's agreed to be the first speaker that we've brought into the society.
Thank you, David. So welcome all. I'll endeavour to do my best, the knowledge I've gleaned over the years, and I put some on paper, and I hope it'll be interesting. Firstly, I'll go back to the formation of Magamabi, because I think this is crucial of the area. 1147, the Cistercian monks were put into Magamabi by the then Robert Earl of Gloucester, who was gifted the lands of Glamorgan and Margam from, I believe it was Queen Mary. From that date, and the monks started building the abbey, which, as I said, was 1147. There is a reference to BRYN in 1249, and that reference is when for half a mark and the yearly rent of half a crannog of wheat, as long as the monks used the coal, Owen the son of Ali Thur, who I think might have been one of the Welsh headmen of the district, in his son gave to the Magamabi all the stony coal. Now the stony coal meant the outcrops that were appearing in the area. And pennies being a significant establishment as way back as the 900s, then the stony coal was first mined by the monks in that area. So that really takes us to the name and village of BRYN first year mark. We jump along now to 1818, 1819, and we got the Industrial Revolution arriving, TALBOT, Carmarthen, Pontefract, where they've got the copper works, steelworks, tinworks later, and primarily the use of fuel for the Industrial Revolution was timber. And they cut out the timber woods in the localities until they nearly exhausted, when they then switched to the fuel we now call coal. Well, it was the Carmarthen Copper Works that obtained the rights from the monks of Margamaby to start mining the coal in the area of BRYN. But firstly, they had the problem of transportation. To overcome that, they must have been very clever surveyors. If we take a line from Collier Road down the Bram Road, below the garage and in front of the house round to Crowley, and you find the cutting heading down below the road, Penny Wylod, opposite Penny Wylod cottages, there's a cutting in to Anfield Rover's gate, cross the gateway, down to the top of Pen Machine. Now if you look at the top of Pen Machine, where we've had a bit of flooding over the years, when water comes down from Kilcarn, you'll find a distinct flat section towards the ruins of Pen Machine. Now that section there was the changeover section for journeys coming up empty, going down full, and the changeover points for the tramway. The tramway itself down to Carmarthen was from the Pen Machine. It wasn't a powerhouse, it was a winding house where there was an endless rope apparently, and on the endless you had full journeys down, empty journeys up, and of course they had a bit of a braking system. We come back now, they then extended from Collier Road to the quarrying we got at Pen Mine, or people know as Jackal and Tom. That's the three people that operated the area. And until the late 50s, there was quite a large drum on the top of the quarry. Many people remember it. Younger ones can't, because certain people, unscrupulous in this world, called the Jippos, think the scrap. So the remains of the foundations are still in situ, and they're quite large. My memory of the drum, it must have been between 8 and 9 foot in diameter, and it was the best part of 12 foot, 14 foot wide. It is quite a significant structure. That was the quarrying section where, because of the Industrial Revolution in Carmarthen, they needed houses. They needed houses, they needed stone. So these copper mine people started to quarry the stone in the BRYN at the same time as they started to coal mine. From the extension at the top, and if we go to a photograph, there it is a Collier Road. You'll see at the back, and you have to look at the photo, that building at the back there is the first brickworks in the BRYN. And opposite the brickworks there was a big clay pit. But you can see the incline from the quarry coming straight down. But at the top there's another incline turning up to the old tips at the top, and the back of Meadow Road going towards the sea. That again was the main transportation system from the three quarries that came into existence at that time. The three quarries, as people know them, as Parker BRYN being at the top, in the forestry, goes past the tip, look up the incline, and on the top just inside the forestry, many people walking the roads up there. I've seen the tip, seen the foundation leftovers. That was the first and one of the main quarries in the BRYN, Parker BRYN. Apparently in its heyday, 200 odd people, and it was substantial. But the transportation system came down the incline at the back of the tip, which is still there today, and you all go for a walk, take your dogs, down to the Drisio gate, turning system there, meeting the Dresiog mines, coming down, as I explained, the system to Carmarthen. So really, that was the beginning of BRYN, 1840s. Parker BRYN, Kevner BRYN, which is down behind the tip by the pylon. Parker BRYN level was put in there, and I'll come to a little bit later in 1894 when the GWR came. Then that coal from there was conveyed by the main line to TALBOT. So really there we have the start of what we call the industry of BRYN. Torneel, if people don't know Torneel, is opposite Minestate Golf Course at the top of the mountain. That mine was a substantial mine, and the transportation for that was down through Dresiog, the old farm, at the back is a cut-in, and that cut-in showed the way from the Torneel tips down to meet the tram line, taking it all to Carmarthen. So up until the turn of the century, 1894-95, you had the transportation to Carmarthen. And one of the funny things that happened, I mean, we're all health and safety conscious, all the world has gone mad, but there were no food shops in the BRYN at that time. So the only food available was Carmarthen. How did they get it? They used to ride the trucks. The women used to ride the trucks down to Carmarthen. Once a week they were allowed to ride the trucks and come back with their goods from Carmarthen. But I do understand, and I've gleaned that at that time the stores belonged to the copper miners, the people that owned the works, and it was sort of a bartering system. And because they owned the stores there, and the people here were employed by the same companies, then it was still a bit of a bartering system. Until 1884, I believe it is, the cooperative was formed. And there it is on the right hand side. That is the first cooperative shop for the people of the BRYN area. And you can see the people outside congregated. And I do believe you can see someone who may be one of the stonemen with his white apron on. It's difficult to see, but that takes you back to BRYN and the industry of BRYN, where we started from. We then progressed, because some of the stone from the quarries built the likes of, I think there's Collier Row, Bartig Row, Meadow Row, Buck Row, which they call Park Avenue, and Cross Row, and Rowland's Cottages. They were the houses in the village in the turn of the 1850s, 1860s. Minestate Road came later, Ringgold Street came later. And it's interesting to note, if you look at Station Terrace, and Tony lives at the top, Station Terrace was built in three sections at three different times. You've got the first section where you get to the manager's house, then there was the gap, there was another little section, and then the newer section where Tony lived up at the top end. So you can see how Gafroom Terrace started and was expanded. And BRYN expanded in general up until that time. There was no sanitation at that time. So you can imagine what it was like to live in the houses with no sanitation, and water was at a premium, mainly streams, etc., etc. But in 1894, Lady Talbot had the Margam UDC formed, the Margam Urban District Council, and this area was part of Margam. And it was from her first inclination that the sanitation wasn't good in the village and the children, that she instituted the people there to look at the sanitation system. And that began in 1898, I think it was finished in about 2001, and that system is down the sewage fields. hence it's called the sewerage fields. So the sanitation for the part of BRYN that was small was put into the farm down in the sewerage fields. Thereafter, I think the main sewer line came round about the late 20s to Port Talbot, as we know it now. So really, if you look at that, and at the same time, the people with owning the mines had to find water with the villagers. So they come up with two areas where we had our water up until, I think, the 50s, where we had the pumping station. But that was Badibach, where we had one of the reservoirs, and up the back of below Penn Mine, the quarry, was the second reservoir. The pipeline from up the top there came down to Meadow Row, connected to the village pipeline, and that's how water first came into the village. And that was up until the 1950s when we had, or late 50s when we had the pumping station. So we have progressed to the houses, we've progressed to the sanitation, and etc. Now I think you've got a feel, an outline of how BRYN was born. And industry was the making of the village. Obviously, if one was to look at the early census, there are people that came here from Pembroke, from Somerset. There are many strange names of people who came because of the Industrial Revolution. And from there, we began looking really at the integration of the agricultural system within our area. This area consisted, before the Revolution, with about 20 farms. Starting at, we call the BRYN area, Tinner Farm, people know it, up to Kilgovid, Gathcombe, the Wembury. Now, Penny's Wildwood was a very important farm. So was Penny's Vowel. They were manors of the old Margam Cistercian monks, where there was a lot of education taking place as regards to the Bible. And if we look at Penny's, and there's one certain gentleman very, very famous called Shenkin Penny's, or Shenkin Thomas his real name was, and he was, and I've got to get the names, I spoke to David, a Seite, period, S-E-I-A-T. He belonged to the Seite. Now that was very uppermost part of the circle in the churches, chapels at that time, and he preached on the first chapel, was in different farms at the top end of the Goiter there. That again was a very religious focal point, where many teachers came from, particularly one who came from the Harvard farm to, and I come to school later, but she horseback rode to BRYN twice a week for the first school in BRYN, which I'll tell you a little bit later. But in these chapels and churches, we had the first and the earliest church here was, I think they call it Annie-Delwood, right? That was the first chapel in BRYN. And how did it come about? It came about because Phelanbach, which is a little ruined building down in the sewerage field, everybody knows that is down in the corner? Yeah. Right, well, that was repaired. When they did this repair, and was put back with a thatch roof and used as a religious centre, mainly with the farmers and the ingress of people coming into the village. But so many people went there, it was undersized and dilapidated. So they applied to the Markham Estate for a plot of ground so that they could build a chapel. Now that all this was taking place and religion was uppermost in people's minds, and they were gifted for, I don't know, £25 I think it was, the site at Chapel Terrace. And that was the first church after Villeneuve in BRYN. And that was in 1856. Rebuilt, of course, in 1914, when it was later pulled down as we know it. So we then had the Carmel, which goes back to 1860. We've got Jerusalem, which is Jerusalem. Let me just get the date right. Jerusalem. Got it? 1858. And of course, one that a lot of people won't remember is the Apostolic Church. Probably youngsters wouldn't know what the Apostolic Church is. But where the community centre is now was a wooden building, and that was the Apostolic Church of the BRYN. Built in about 1920 and demolished, I think, in the 50s, the same time as the air raid shelter went in that area. So that really goes to put together the Shenkin Thomas, who was well known, and another highlight of that was that Bardic Vowed, Penny Wilod, Penny's Bar, Gascombe and Tinner Fram were seats of Bible learning, where people congregated, say, once a week in different places to be educated in the Bible. Farmers' children, and people that associated servants and maids with farms. And that was called a circulating school. And that's going back to the 1870s. So they were prime areas of education, but Bible-wise, with a religion. So really that takes care of an outline of the religion. And if we look back to, let me get my notes in order here, or I lose myself. Then we've got the agriculture and farms, right. We move forward into the education in the village, the schools. First school, as I hinted, was down in Billywack, which is the little building down in bottom of Bringurnos. That collapsed and was made redundant. I think the Miss Lewis came here from the Harvard. I was put to understand by the old farmer of different farm. She rode here up until the 1850s, and that was the first established school in the village. It went from there then that the second school was built up at BRYN Cottages. BRYN Cottages, now known as BRYN Cottages, was BRYN Troedegan Achab Farm. That was the origination of the cottages. It was BRYN Troedegan Achab Farm. BRYN Troedegan Isa Farm is up in the forestry, which is a ruin as you walk up that incline I indicated to you just now. So that was the second school, and the school wasn't up to any standard. There was lots of rows and there was no funding. I think the first headmistress lasted about 6 months, and she resigned and went elsewhere. But that went on from 1850, I think it's 1859, quite late, to the year 2000, right? Where the BRYN school, as we know it, the third BRYN school, was built in the year 2000, until we have the modern school. With a point of interest, the schoolhouse that was attached to the second school at BRYN Cottages, I do believe Mary, right that you was there after the war with Guy Brown, Mary and David.
Yes.
And that was just after the war. I can remember houses were short supply then. People were living with parents, grandparents, wherever you could get accommodation. And I quite remember as a small boy, Mary and her husband. In your uncle's was Mary, wasn't it? Guy?
No, he doesn't.
He wasn't your uncle. He's Brown, he was, Guy Brown. What's his uncle? Palms, uncle. Palms, uncle. I was looking for them. Palms. That is your uncle guy up there. That's right. So that was when, and up until I think 53, that was demolished and taken away. That was a schoolhouse. And of course Mrs. Stamford was the caretaker, I think, nearly all her life for the BRYN School number 3. And another caretaker we got with us tonight, the BRYN School number 4. So, right. We revert then a little bit to the history of the hostilleries. As you know, no village can be a village without a hostillery. And the first hostillery was the Royal Oak in Batty Road, number 1. That ceased in existence in round about the 1898-2000 when the present Royal Oak was built. So one ceased and the second Royal Oak started. And of course we got this establishment which came about in 1950, making still 2 in the village. So that really was the hostilleries, and our first stewardess was Mrs. Ted Jones, and the first landlady of the Royal Oak I can remember in my time was a Mrs. BRYN. Anybody remember a Mrs. BRYN? No, alright, Mrs. BRYN, who retired and went to Penarth to live. After that came Frank Lamb, of course, who took over the post office. So that's really the part of the hostilleries. And if we look into the transport we had, I mentioned earlier that the TALBOT came about in 1894. 1850 it started within Port Talbot, but 1894 we had the connection of the line from Port Talbot to my stake. And eventually, I do believe it is at about 1897 was a connection made between my stake and Cummer, because the railway to Carmarthen was way before the railway in BRYN, and that created the longest tunnel they'd ever built under the GWR, which is the one under Treorchy. I think it's 1.7 miles long. So our line came about in 1894, and a little precursor to all that, Carmarthen then had rolling mills, and at that time they rolled, in 1890 they rolled a railway line 62 foot 5 inches long, which is shown in the Great Exhibition in London in 1894. And that's a little perk for Carmarthen, rolling the biggest line, the longest line. Well, of course, our line had a passenger service until 1938 and closed, unfortunately, in 1963 when the Corrie died. But previous to that, George Thomas of Finbury Motors in 1921 started a bus service, a charabanc service, which sustained the village for, I know, 21 to, when did they finish? 1970 odd? Somewhere around there. 50 odd years that Finbury Services looked after BRYN and the surroundings. Part of the garage that has been cleared on the entrance to the village was one of their main centres, other than the one at my rugby club, for servicing the buses. And that was in the 50s. But at that time, because they only ran an hourly service, the Southwards Transport offered to run the half-hour service. So in the 50s onwards, we had Southwards Transport on the half-hour and the Finbury Motor Services on the hour. And that system carried on until the present system we've got now. So really that was the transport of the day. So if we turn back to the village now, we've come to the turn of the century, and we look at our health doctors we have. Now, the earliest doctor that I'm able to pick up is a Dr. Warren, who was the first medical officer of BRYN, followed by a Dr. Scott, a Dr. Ryan. The pole we had was a Dr. Gajek, who wound up after many kerfuffles in Alley Street. And we had a very famous Welsh international who used to lean on the bar of the Royal Oak and give you whatever paper you wanted. He was called King Turner. And from that we had some locums until we had Dr. Davis from my state, where we are now part of the clinical service from my state. We look at the policemen we had, and we can go back to my earliest is Kellaway. At Kellaway, then we had a Bevan, then an Eric Thomas, then we had a Cryer, Bernard Cryer, and Sailor Bill is our last. Sailor Bill Thomas, who was as bad as King Turner. And we look at the village shops of that time, turn of the century. We start down with, I still call her Mrs. Jones the Barber, but Margaret the Barber's mother was not only the barber for the BRYN, but she also had a little sweet shop, and it's in two halves. You either want the sweets in there, or you want your haircut in there. Take your pick. Next door was Amima Tucker, who had a butcher shop there. And relating back to those times, the farms themselves delivered milk to their own customers. They had customers who were selected. You selected a farm you had your milk from, and he came round. Until eventually there was one left, who was Donald Davis and his famous horse Dick on the milk cart. And then we had a gentleman from Margam called John Priest, who had a milk round in Margam and decided to expand, bought out the remaining farmers delivering milk in BRYN, and formed one round which he ran for a good number of years until he expanded again down in Old Abravan, and he gave up and Glenison Milk bought the BRYN part of him. So really that's the history surrounding the history of the milk support in the village and the shops. As I said, Mrs. Barber. Then we went to where David James is living now at the end house in Baldwin Street, and his door come window facing east was again a butcher shop window. We came from there to the middle of Bryngerna Street, where we had Mrs. Martell's. Then from the Martells we went to where Cliff Wright had a little shop next to Georgie's. Georgie was the main supplier. At the turn of the century, Robertson Bakehouse was going. John Robertson Bakehouse served all the bread in the BRYN, and we used to go for halfpenny's worth of yeast, please, Mr. Roberts, and I said, you'd have in a big packet, halfpenny's worth of yeast. From the Roberts, we had John Harry Jones, who had the post office in the middle of Bryngerna Street, and we had Marsden's. Marsden's then to the co-op where the shop is now, and down at the bottom on the tump was the chip shop. There was the chip shop in front of the Corridor Row, where that building is in the end there now, next to the lamppost, was our early chip shop. Not forgetting, we had Ashwin the Cobbler. Ashwin the Cobbler was at the back end of Brigade, Baldwin Street at the top there, and he was to do all the shoes, the cobblers of the village. So, no, it was before Thelma did the hair. Mrs. Jones is the barber. And of course we had the garage that came later in the 50s. But unbeknown to many people, we had a money lender in BRYN. An official money lender. Am I right, Julie? Her name was Mrs. Fisher in Bryngerna Street. And because the colliers in those days first had holidays, they had no pay. And when they wanted to go and watch a rugby match somewhere, they had to go and borrow off Mrs. Fisher. She was the official money lender. So that's refreshing some people's minds. Later on, after the war, then we had salt ore. We used to come around every week with the salt, selling salt. Modesty oil, because people required oil.
Mrs. Fisher has got first ambulance.
Oh yes, she had the first ambulance, that's right. You're right, Edgar. Her son was the driver.
Who's the paper shop?
I haven't come to Edwin yet. First paper shop was Edwin One-Arm. And unfortunately, Edwin had the front of his hand blown off with a firework in the early days. But Edwin was our first with a newspaper before Kit bought Edwin's round. But we also had a telephone exchange. And Lucy Saunders used to run the telephone exchange from her front room. Plug in and plug out and listen to what was going on. so Lucy knew everything that was going on in the village. But last but not least, we had a very famous fruit and veg man who worked by night. He was called Alcuin. And Alcuin came around, and his last job used to be about the bus stop in Burgurna Street by Marsden's old shop for there. And he'd still be there at 11:30 with his fruit and veg van open. He wouldn't come to Bryn till 6, but that was Alcuin. So that really takes care of the village life from the war up until sort of the 50s, and what we had in the village. There's one other very important chapter in the village. There are many chapters, but we had the Welfare Hall, which was the centre of attraction of Britain. The Welfare Hall, if we look back, it started in 1926 with a Mrs. A.J. Canton as the chairman. I have got in my records, chairwoman, I would thought she would have been. And it was gathering of the monies from the colliers, contributing a penny or tuppence a week to the welfare fund. It took them 13 years to build the Welfare Hall at the bottom, completed in 1938. And in that hall we had a library, we had 5 full-size snooker tables, we had a lovely big hall where Thomas of Parton used to be up helping Griff with his magic lantern in the early days in the black shed. He moved himself down to the library when it was completed from thence on. And that's where we had the films and the Threepenny Hop. Unfortunately, as we all know, the demise of the colliery and the people in charge of the library as trustees at the time being David Thomas Walters, Dudley Daniels, his father, and I think Roy Pugh was another one. But eventually there was no funds coming in, it wasn't making money, and it was falling into disrepair, so it was closed, and the land and the area was gifted to the council at the same time as the welfare field was gifted to the council, albeit all paid for by the miners and the miners' funds. And that is the history of our welfare and the welfare year, because the building at the welfare, many people can remember, was used for the whist drive. The Cantons and everybody associated with whist. That was the whist drive. The big plate glass windows in the front, one changing rooms. It was a whist drive centre. I mean, the bowls hadn't been built then, and that was the only building. The changing room for the field at the time was the black shed, which is on the entrance, which has now disappeared into the double gates they got there now. So that sort of takes you back to what was in the village and what's disappeared. Of course, I've taken us through the houses, the early houses, And we haven't come to the sort of the modern houses, which was 1930 odds where we got the Baldwin houses, Coronation, British. Then we had the welfare in the 50s and pennies, ale pennies, and in the 60s we had the bungalows. But we also had 10 prefabs after the war in the 50s, which are where the old age bungalows are now. We had 10 prefabs, and they were gifted to people who had served during the war, returned from war, and had nowhere to go. So that is really how BRYN has got its housing and its housing system. If we go in the last, and I'm not going to keep you any longer, but the last topic I've got is well known to everybody in the village, more so than all the rest, is the sports section. And if we look back to the origins of the sport in the BRYN, I know that Owen Jones did a lot of work for the 1975 three-quarter centenary, of which a lot of historical work had been done, and we from that time found that, or we thought that the rugby section had been founded in 1900. But we don't think that's true. We think, or believe now, that there is reference in Aberystwyth to BRYN having a team some 20 years earlier. That's in the late 1880s. But I think that's something to be followed up. That origin of the BRYN Wanderers comes about because they had to rent field of the farmers. And when they didn't pay the rent, they didn't have the field. So the first field was down below Gackham Terrace on Bartig Bowed land, which is the other side of the railway line, and that was round about the time they built the railway line, and that was the first field. The second is where the Amy, or the reclaimed land on the tip is now. The third field was the other side of that, on the other side of the Dressiog Road. That land belonged to BRYN Troedegan Isel farm, which is the ruin I told you up in the forestry. That was the third. Then we came to the fourth, which is our present field, and that was opened in have we got a photograph of the 1934 opening? I haven't been taking the photographs. There's one of the gates in the opening there of 37. Anyway, that field was the original field, and it faced east to west. Right? That was east to west. That it is. That's the opening in 1937. The gentleman that's opening it, 36 is it? 36. The gentleman that's opening it is Eddie Miles's brother, who was the colliery manager of BRYN. Eddie's father, sorry. Eddie's father, who was the colliery manager of BRYN at the time. What did I say, his brother? Eddie's father. Eddie only had a sister, didn't he? Eddie only had a sister. Eddie's father's brother. Right. We got it right. But Miles was the colliery manager at the time, and I think and believe, and Mary David has told me, but I think that one of these for there is Latituda. That is what Mary David has told me, that.
Yes, and I'm wrong, then the other one.
And I'm wrong, the other one, is it? But as I say, that is 1937, and just here above the head, look, you can see the black shed. That's the roof of the shed, and that's where they changed at the time. So the field ran east to west, but then we come to the 50s, where Dowsett opened the open cast mining at the top of Untitled Hill on the Pelcan Road. And by some means or other, Dowsett, may have been something to do with our councillors then at the time, who were quite powerful, decided we wanted work done here. They donated the change around of the ground. So they did a lot of work in turning and making the field much bigger. And the rugby club then went over the Wine, over Diving Donuts' Wine, to play rugby over in the rush field facing the bungalows. And that's where we were for about 3 years. Hence, we come back to the original field we got now on the grounds, which we are playing north to south, cricket in the middle, soccer on the end. So really, that's a little history of the rugby club's formation, but in the club and Owen Jones' records, we've got a lot more. Saying our first international and only international we had here was a policeman called Pill. He was the only senior international. We've had many boys from BRYN play for senior sides. Too many for me to mention. But many play for Aberafan, Maesteg, Bridgen, Neath. But Pill was our only senior international. But we had Eddie Wonklin and Ronnie Roblin as our full youth internationals. So, Dean Jones was a youth, that's right, Dean Jones. Well, I'll forget about Dean. Dean was our last youth international, Eddie and Ron before him. So, really, if we look at the rugby, as I say, I've not delved too deeply because Owen has done a lot of work and it is available to everyone, and I'm sure a lot of people know it. And that was for the 75th anniversary. We look at the cricket section. Now, I can only dig up cricket being played in BRYN from after the war. And that was the likes of Gerald McGrath, Carter's brother-in-law from my stage, Tommy Watkins. They were the early players that we can remember on that said rugby ground we had over the Wine, on 2 concrete pads. And the 2 concrete pads had coconut mats. Either side had a length of coconut matting. And that is where the first cricket that I can find was played in the BRYN. That's the rugby section. So, cricket is still going, playing today in the grounds that we have. Nothing of mention. We haven't produced any starlets for Glamorgan or anything, but everybody seems to be enjoying it. We'll go on to hockey. We got a famous Welsh hockey captain that came from the village, called Janet Morgan, who played for Stow on the hockey side at the time, and she represented Wales as their captain for many years. And she was the daughter of our first forester that came to BRYN, Danny Morgan, who came to the Bartley Farm. That was the centre for the Forestry Commission on its inception in 1951, when the forestry began. And the forestry was planted by none other than some of our good friends who are now in Cardiff and Swansea Nick. They came up here on the wagons. They were chained to the back. The lads, they showed the chiefs in charge, used to run through the lock and the rail, and they used to slide them out to the back, and away they'd go up the mountain, get their sacks, and they'd be planting for a day. Back down, and they'd be in, back to the Nick. So the whole of the forestry was planted by our good friends that did a bit of service for the community. And that again takes us to Billy Vaughan, who was the instigator of the Forestry Commission, who proposed the legislature in 1946 to 1950 when it became an Act of Parliament, and his stone still lies at the top near the old Bodwick Stone on the side of the road. And the Princess Royal Stone, who opened it in 1953, I think it was 52, 50, something like that. She's at the top, and the point where the stone is the highest point of Morganic Forest, and at the time they had a tower there, which is a fire watch tower. And the lads in the forestry used to have weekend overtime up the tower, fire spotting. Any smoke, we fought. That was the fire tower. So that was digressing. We've had soccer in the village. Unfortunately, we haven't got any more. And we had a rifle club in 1908. A lot of people don't know we had a rifle club here in 1908. That rifle club used an area opposite the golf links in my state. Yes, well, the gentleman knows. Opposite the golf links in my state, on the left-hand side going down, just over the top of the horses are now in there are purpose-made buns where they used to have practice for firing and targetry, etc., with the rifle club. That was 1908. Then, the most famous in the BRYN here, we got the bow section. At last, they've come down from the mountains and lodged themselves in the club. It's taken them years, but they're in now part of the club society. And really, that amounts for what I know of the sporting part of the BRYN. But to conclude, I'm not going to keep you any longer. One part that I did lose out on is that we've had 2 wars, as we all know, unfortunately, but we had a cenotaph down, which was initially down at the library, which is our Webster Hall. That covered First World War, and then the Second World War was added before it was removed to its present site opposite the shop in the street. So really, that's my little bit of knowledge of how I knew and how I know BRYN and its formation. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. It was very informative. And Alan mentioned Janet Morgan. I went to the Welsh school in Manchester, my state. And one of the first girls I met there was Janet. She used to come up from BRYN. The father being a Welsh teacher, sent to the Welsh in my state. And when I started teaching in BRYN in 1967, I went into the school and this boy said, "Lucy, but I looked round, and who was it? Janet Morgan." Yeah? And she not only cast in Wales, but she had a very, very good hockey player in the 6th form in Dublin at the time, a girl called Shirley Ellis. And Janet and Shirley both played for Wales together, teacher and pupil. But anyway, I don't know if any of you got any questions you want to ask Alan? The other thing Alan mentioned the Rifle Club in BRYN. When Paul comes back here, we've got a photograph of the original Rifle Club in 1908.
1908.
With a police sergeant there that... but anyway, has anybody got any questions they want to ask Alan? The ambulance one.
I tried to find about the ambulance hall, Linda. If we go and have a look at the photograph, let me just have a look here for a second, and I'll point something out to you. People on this one, this is something I want to show you all that you haven't seen before. That's a pig suckling little pups. That's a rarity. And that is the Kumara Farm Marga. So that's a little something. But if you go back to, I've skipped the sales, etc. was 1 year with the church. No photograph of the...
If you click through them all now, I'll
see by you as a gentleman now because...
Go through them one at a time. People can ask you.
Anyway, to answer your question, Linda, the church was built in 1920, and behind the church there was a building. The building with the bungalow behind the Ambulance Hall is now. And what I've been gleaned is that was used because of the fatalities that they had in the colony, which are numerous, weekly, almost daily. They had a stone slab there where they used to fetch the miners, wash them down and put them right up, do whatever they had to do, the necessary paperwork. But the Ambulance Hall then replaced it, and it became part of the Priory of Wales because they got involved with collieries and putting attendants into collieries. And hence they had a new slab in the Ambulance Hall as it is. And I do believe the Ambulance Hall came about in about 1914, somewhere around that area. And
I remember it below. There was a clinic at the time. There was a women's section, a men's section, and then there was boys.
that's right.
And I can remember those with big cheese opening.
Right.
So I would have thought that we were 10-year-olds.
It would be 1914, 1918, Bill. Oh, that's in the internet. And just on that question, just to put you, there is something that I have forgotten. Coming back to that Ambulance Hall, we had a very famous tutor, who was the attendant of the colliery called Albert Welsby. And as young village boys, we used to attend the first aid where there was a BRYN ambulance team that competed all over South Wales. I can remember being locked up in Kitay's High School in Cardiff for about 6 hours, because when you went in, there was drawn lots, and if it was last out, tough luck, you were locked up with a cup of tea for the day. We in BRYN won the Welsh final on 2 occasions. We went to London, we competed in the Earl's Court against the whole of Britain, where we didn't win by a whisker, we came second, and on the adjudication of that day, the adjudicator remarked that we spoke very quickly, and on some occasions he missed what we were saying. And he just gave that as a prompt in that we were very close, we could have won. But that was the village ambulance side that was second of the whole Great Britain. These in the bottom there. That's one crew. Roy Davis. Right, in my crew. That's Jerry McGrath. That's up the station. From Badger. That's he's from Coronation Street. They call it Bonzo. And that's Dennis Henry. He's living down the beach. Jones. Now that is a photograph that I've been given. I haven't got a clue.
I think, Alan, that photograph, I think I've got one of those. Wayne Miller's mother in it.
It's certainly BRYN School. After this built, you can see the windows and the stonework, and it's the side facing the bungalows now.
Yeah. The
Apparently, Vi Miller gave me one of those, and her mother was in it.
Right.
And I think, is that Miss Emily Joseph there?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Emily Joseph, you want straight grammar.
What row, Meadow? Yep. That isn't it? That's down in Arby's Lake. When he went over behind the vicarage, went down a courtesy ring week.
Yeah. We need to go by there,
Carry on. I do believe this is the BRYN Labour Party. I think this is a BRYN Labour Party do down at the library. I know there's Mrs. Campbell there. I know Mr. Morris. That's the Jackie Davis's father. Come down here. Yes, is your father? And I got it. I know it's down the library. It's the whisk, is it? Got it. Right, it's the whisk. Take that back. That's the opening. That's 34. That photograph there is 1968 for the investiture of Prince Charles. Down the old school. Predominant there on the right hand side, Billy Bynum. Work hard. You really go to have a look closely to see everybody there. I can see Tom Morgan's in there. And that was Charlie Adams at the back. Put the one there in the bottom. The farmer. Oh, right. There you are. That's it. Where's Auntie Govid by? Is she gone? Where's your father by? Grandfather? Grandfather there.
Oh, I see.
That's my grandfather. That's Tom Howard's part of Kilcan Farm. He live in Bowen Street. That's Guy Kamalo Farm. That's Two to the Abbot. That's Scaffold. That's Different. That is over the top here. Blanco, that's not Blanco Quero. That's the last resident of Dracio Farm, Guy Jones. That's my father. And that's taken in 1951 in Camaro. All off-mark, all old mountains. That there is an annual gathering. They gather the mountains twice a year. Year marking time and shearing time. And all the farmers congregated to take a farm in at a time. Because they ran as far as the Bodwick Stone, there were 6 farms meeting on the Bodwick Stone in sections. Because of the sheep had become bred and born, they never varied from their patches. They always stayed within their zones. And that is an annual gathering on top of Margam Mountain, and I do think it's round about 1921.
How many sheep were they sort of getting?
Well, my father was running 3,000 sheep on top of that mountain on top of Margam. Howard was running the best part of 2.5 sheep. So you can see, when you talk about Sangonoid there, they scuffed up to meet them, the measures, in the bottom of stand there. They were running the best part of 2.5. It was all big open spaces with a lot of sheep. And cheering, they'd all have a specific day, and everybody would ride to a specific farm. And that was the cheering day. So that's the top of Margaret Mountain by the Bodwick Stone. And if you notice one feature, they've all taken their hats off. I don't think they've seen a camera before. Anyway, that's about it. Anybody else want to ask any other questions? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Alan, very much. I spent a lot of time putting on that. Very, very informative. What do you do afterwards? We need to put that on. Yes. Want some people to look at them. One of the things that Graham and I looked at, we've been thinking about the industry in coal mining, and Alan mentioned people who were being killed and died regularly in the BRYN. One was quite a famous British bantamweight boxer from Webster. Billy BRYN, yeah, killed in BRYN. There's nothing here to remind us of it. Yeah? And it would be a good thing if we could put a memorial on the tip for those who were killed in this area. It's something that possibly Brad can look at it as well. But on behalf of the Historical Society, I'd like to thank you first of all for coming here, and secondly for Alan for giving us this talk.